it's 6 o'clock here. We're gonna get rolling. We're just gonna start out with introductions and come on in, yes. You know, for the first, this is gonna be kind of an informal meeting. It's really, you know, Joe has kind of headed this up, Joe Larson. My name is Steve Rajewski. We also have Sarah, I'm not sure what your last name is.
Sarah Zarling.
Zarly,
Yep.
and Kelly Brown. And so we're just concerned citizens that have kind of, come on in.
Is this for the data center?
It is,
Yes.
it is, yep.
Okay.
Right. So we're just trying to help people understand what the data center is all about, trying to hopefully answer some questions that you may have, try to quell misconceptions, try to deal just strictly in facts. Kelly is kind of an expert on the environmental part of it, and we have Prescott Balch, who's going to do a presentation. He's been very involved with the data center in Caledonia and helping people to understand what's going on down there. And we're going to open up the floor after some of the presentations for questions. If during the presentations you have questions, please just raise your hand. Our objective is to help people in our community come together. I mean, we really don't, we want politics out of it. We want people to be able to walk out of here with a understanding of what's going on with the data center, what's happening in our community, how is this done, is it completed, what stage is it at, how do we find information, who do we talk to get information. And then out of this meeting today, we're hoping that this is just going to be kind of an introductory meeting, and that we'll have another meeting maybe in a couple of weeks where we'll bring more information together, answer some of the questions that maybe come out tonight, and I guess we'll take it from there. Joe, if you wanna kind of talk a little bit.
So I'm going to first start out, and if you've joined the group at all, I'm a midwife. And I work with Colorado Hospital Birth, and my concerns came from, one, what was it going to do where I have births at my house to fill tubs, because I've read and heard that there's a huge impact on water supply. But also, what about the health of moms and babies in our areas, and women and children? And so I created to get educated. I do not know anything about this. I've learned a lot through conference calls. I've done a ton of research in 5 days, because that's how long this group's been up. And I just came going, nobody knows the answers. Nobody talked about it. Does anybody know the consequences of it? And when I started reaching out to different people, there was like, we didn't hear about it. Yeah, there was some things in the paper, but like, usually when you have things big that impact an area, there are meetings. There's discussions. There's, why is this happening? What's going on here? And there was none of that.
Before it happens.
Right, before it happens, right? Like, if something's coming up, we have a town discussion, right? We talk about those things. How's it gonna affect us? Is it gonna affect us? And, you know, meta is a word that people see big bucks, big money, right? And maybe that's the case, but the fact is there are 47 proposed data centers in Wisconsin. Like, why? Why here? What for? And so I'm looking at it going, researching the harm to wildlife, researching the harm to what can happen to our water supply. Once the water, even though it's a closed loop system, it has to then detoxify and start over, right? What is it gonna do to my property values? I've been here a year and a half. I don't know if I would have bought a house here knowing that was happening, being honest. I haven't lived here a very long time, but I'm concerned that we don't have answers to our questions, and I don't even know what questions to ask, honestly. So I started this group for education. Please don't look at me as I know everything. I really don't know much, but what I can do and what I'm good at is I research, I put things together, and I really want to create a safe space, right? Understand that. I don't want politics involved. I've already been attacked as being such. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to find out, understand, and get educated, because as a logo in my company, education equals empowerment. And I feel like we have no empowerment, we have no idea what we're facing or looking at. So that's why I started the group 5 days ago. and now we're here.
Yeah. So I just want to see a quick raise of hands. How many of you in the room are from Beaver Dam? Okay, and then leave your hand up if you knew a lot of details about this project before the city council voted on it. So we have one person.
Well, I wrote about it.
Okay, so because you write about it. So, and my hand was up, but it really should have been down because, you know, I think in general,
That's
a lot of
concerning.
us just felt like we didn't know anything about this.
Also, there's just a big fence.
And yeah, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how this project compares in size and scope to other big projects that have been done in Beaver Dam, but it's a pretty big project, and you would think that the public would have been vastly informed and involved before this because it's such a big impact on our community. And so, you know, we're all coming at this. Some of us may support it, some of us may be against it, others may just be wondering, looking, should I be for it, should I be against it? We just wanna, we're not in, I think initially we were kind of upset that we didn't know a lot about it, and we thought there was gonna be impacts that we weren't told about. So, you know, initially we started as, hey, we should try to see what we can do to, you know, prevent this from continuing, because we can see them bulldozing fields that once had turkey and deer and geese all over in them, and cattails, and now it's a big building going up, and you hear stories about water usage, et cetera, et cetera. So we're hoping that this is going to be just really informative, and it opening the doors for you to find where can I get more information, who can I go to, and I'll leave it with that.
Yeah, so there's clipboards and there's paper and there's pens. Please write down your questions. I don't promise that I'm gonna have the answers. Like I said, I'm a midwife with 5 babies and twins on the way any day. So I put this together, and I'm working on putting a website together that if the questions come forth, I can put them down, I can put the research, and I will update as I can. But please understand that if in this meeting, if I get a call, I'm going to be leaving. It's not my number one priority, but I do feel it's a priority to us to understand what's going to happen in our area. So with that, I'm going to introduce Prescott. Prescott was one of the men that, part of the amazing system that stopped the Caledonia data center. He has done lots and lots of research. He's kind of like the professional in the room. So I've had multiple conversations with him. I feel like to get educated and to understand, he's a great asset for that. And then also to understand what it could do, how they work, if they don't work, who's liable. That's quite interesting. And the health things are also very interesting. The sound, the noise. This project's in 2 steps from what I can learn. First step is going to be completed in 2028, and then the second step is done in 2031. So this is not going to be a quick next year's project. We're going to have all this first, and then they start making revenue, and only 6% of them last about 25 years. So when they don't last, who foots the bill? And what do we do with that huge building?
Joey, do you want to be the person? There's somebody who's trying to get in.
So Prescott,
Who's trying to join?
Prescott, if you want to
Oh, it's my note taker.
Oh, okay.
talk a little bit about your experience with the data center in Caledonia, and hopefully that'll cover some of the, maybe our questions and concerns, and bring up more questions for us here in Beaver Dam.
Okay, I'll dive in. I want to preface this with one thing everybody can do if they're not already there is join that Facebook group. Look for stuff that I posted. I posted a bunch of our notes from the Caledonia proposal that are I thought applicable to this deal, to just give you some background on the issues that we ran into and what we raised and what we focused on. So there's good content in there. But before I get into that, let me share my screen, and sorry to make it somewhat formal with a presentation, but I think the visual will help a little bit. The first page is just who am I and why should you listen to me? And can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Can you make it bigger on your end? Like,
Yeah, I will. Let me maximize it. How about that? Is that better?
yeah,
Looks good.
thanks.
Knock knock, who's there?
Yes.
Me who? Me and Kurt love you.
So, pardon me?
Nothing, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so as introduced, my name's Prescott Balch. I'm from Caledonia. I'm 61 years old, recently retired, and enjoying blissful ignorance of local politics. And somebody called me up and said there was a rezoning request and maybe a data center being built a mile and a half from my house, which I didn't particularly care for. So a group of us formed, like this group did. We fortunately got involved before the deal was passed, and we ultimately got Microsoft to withdraw the proposal after generating enough concern with a majority of the village board to cause Microsoft to get scared that they were going to lose the vote. So they pulled it a week before it happened. But why should you listen to me? Well, I have 38-year career in technology on the software development side, last 18 years as an exec with US Bank. And you should listen to me because I love data centers. I made a fantastic career on running software on them, and I know that we need them. Society needs them. But I also know the technology business really well, and I know where the risks are, particularly the risks to the municipality that's hosting them. And I know financial analysis really well. I can glean a lot of information from published financial statements with your village and published documents for the proposal. And most of all though, I cannot stand unfairness. And I look around what's happening in Wisconsin and neighboring states, and I see small towns being picked on by big corporations. The Beaver Dam, Port Washington, Menominee, who put a pause on theirs, Caledonia, who lost, where Microsoft pulled out, also Vienna and Hermantown, Minnesota. What they all have in common is they're small. They don't have resources to deal with projects this big. They don't have the experience doing it. They don't have the legal resources. They don't have the maturity to, as a village or a city or a town, to even know what to do to get ready to have such an agreement with a big corporation. So at the end of the day, these data centers need to exist. And I cautioned everybody that was participating in Caledonia that don't argue we shouldn't build them ever, anywhere, because that'll just get all the people that you're trying to convince to roll their eyes. Not all of them, but most of them. They need to be built someplace. But as you're gonna see as I go through these next few pages, where they really need to be built is where there's a tax base and a commercial real estate base that can absorb them when they reach obsolescence. And that word obsolescence is the key issue here that's unaddressed. And so let me show you how this works. This is what the people in your city voted on. And I mean literally this point in time where project is done, it reaches steady state. The proposal says $567 million in new valuation. You have people in your city council whose eyes were bugging out of their heads because that number is so big. There was going to be by the time they reach steady state, there'll be 11 million in what's called tax increment, which is the new tax revenue for all of your taxing authorities, school district, county, city, all combined. To Beaver Dam, that's $4.8 million a year based on the presentation that they had in November. It will not start to accrue to Beaver Dam until 2046, and I'll show you that in a minute. That may surprise some people because everybody's talking about all the financial benefits, and the financial benefits are really the only benefit in here for Beaver Dam, but those benefits don't start until 2046, and I'll explain why in a minute. the next thing that's got the village or the city people eyes bugging out of their head is it's 32% of your current tax levy. That's huge. Like, that's like a gold mine, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. How can you possibly say no to that? And lastly, they'll tell you that the new infrastructure, and you have to use scare quotes here, it's paid for by the tax increment district. If you don't know what a tax increment district is, you should learn, because they're really important to how cities and villages fund commercial development. And there's a hornet's nest in there that's a separate thread all unto itself. But I'm going to explain to you also why that claim, infrastructure paid for, is a complete unadulterated myth. But if you look at this slide, it's a point in time slide. It's a point in time where you go from project done into steady state, and now everybody thinks, great, this is exactly what we've been waiting for, and we're going to love all this revenue, we're going to lower everybody's taxes, and wonderful things will happen. We'll pave the streets with gold. But there's a whole bunch of years that take you from project start to steady state. You have to design, plan, and construct the buildings. That's a 7 to 10 year project as proposed in the November proposal. And these are hyperscale data centers. They're massive. So the question, I heard a question asked in the intro, well, how does this compare to other deals? It's on the smaller side compared to the other deals, but it's massive. It's an order of magnitude more massive than anything Beaver Dam has ever done in the past and probably will ever do in the future. And a little poke at your city council, for them not to say, time out, let's get the residents involved to understand the magnitude of what we're doing, for them to just sort of skate it through with as little notification as possible is just, it's negligent at best and criminal at worst. This is a massive, fundamental change to a city the size of Beaver Dam, which is, I think, half the size of Caledonia, which I consider to be pretty small to start with. But you've got all these risks just on this 7 to 10 year period. What if they stop midway? A lot of people think there's a bubble in the artificial intelligence world, and that all this data center building is just chasing revenue that's never going to materialize. And you're going to have half completed data centers or partially completed plants, maybe 1 of 3 buildings. Technology changes, the bubble bursts, any number of things can happen with technology because it changes so rapidly. Is your new adjusted steady state still something that you would have done knowing going in where you were going to land? The answer might not be yes, it might be no. But everybody looked at that previous slide and said, hey, the steady state looks fantastic, and never asked the question, what can go wrong getting to the steady state? And the answer is a lot can go wrong. It's also possible they get like halfway there and just decide to stop, but they've got a working data center and all your benefits are cut in half. That may be true too. Would you still do it? I don't know, but did anybody ask the question? Did they talk amongst themselves in closed session about those risks? We don't know, but I'm assuming that they didn't, because the villages that are and cities, small cities that are doing this are in so far over their head they don't even know what questions to ask. But now I'm going to move to the bigger problem, which is what happens after you hit steady state. The single most egregious error that all of these municipalities are making is failing to understand that there is a very finite lifespan to a data center. A commercial real estate building, like a warehouse, will last as long as the concrete and steel. 100 years, easy. A data center is not just a building, but it's a purpose-built building. It is designed specifically for the single function of being a data center. Very important to understand. And the history, my 40 years in the business, data center technology gets overcome by changes on the software side, and data centers have to pivot. They have to do something different. They have to get bigger. They have to provide more power. They have to provide more cooling because they have more servers. They have to fit more servers into smaller spaces, et cetera, et cetera. the technology industry, and I loved it, was as aggressive about change as anything, and they had no concern at all for their past. They will spit something out and start over tomorrow. And data centers have been no different. There is no doubt in my mind, as borne out by history, that these data centers will reach obsolescence, and they will reach it a long time before the building crumbles. 15 to 25 years is the average lifespan of a data center. Now think about that for a minute. What risks? You've trundled along on steady state. Let's say you reach 2050, and now the owner of that building says, I can't use this as a data center anymore. I'm gonna sell it to somebody who's gonna try to reuse it. The very first thing that new owner's gonna do is he's gonna go to your city and say, you have to lower the valuation on these buildings because I can't rent them out to anybody. They're gonna be empty. And little known fact that I learned through my Caledonia experience was commercial real estate has a method of valuing a building that's based on net income. If a building is not producing income, its value drops through the floor. Well, guess what happens if its value drops through the floor? The village is now out all of its revenue. It takes an 80% drop on what is a huge percentage of your current tax levy. That is a major risk, a catastrophic risk to the village in the future if that were to happen. Then think about, well, what are the options? What can Beaver Dam as a community do to absorb that much empty real estate? This is probably more commercial real estate space than the entirety of the rest of Beaver Dam. So there is zero chance that empty real estate, once the data center provider says, we can't use this as a data center anymore, there's zero chance that Beaver Dam is gonna find alternative use for it in any short order. You probably have some old retail stores that have closed down and it's taken years to put new tenants in them. Now imagine that at 1 million square feet. I laugh out loud because it's just absurd to even think that those buildings will ever get reused in any amount of capacity. So the infrastructure that is another topic here. The infrastructure, by infrastructure, what I mean is the electric power and the water and sewer extension. You know the area way better than I do. I don't know it at all, in fact. But what is there, and does extending water and sewer and does extending electricity benefit, in your estimation, does it benefit anything other than the data center that's going there? Because frankly, if it does, that's a great story. That's why we do these big projects and try to extend that infrastructure so that there's future use for the municipality to that space. They don't have the next guy that wants to build a warehouse doesn't have to extend water and sewer or electricity because it's already there. But it's also possible, as I've seen in many cases, including the Caledonia example, there was nothing else there that would ever have benefited from it. The infrastructure was being built solely because of that site, and there was no chance that it would ever be used for something else. Well, if that's the case, then you just spent all that money on infrastructure for no reason. It's now useless. And another question, how long after the TID pays off its debt does the data center go obsolete? So you recall the point that Faith, who finished.
Can you
Sorry.
please say what a TID is again so people understand?
I'm sorry. Yep, TID is Tax Increment District. And I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But ignore that part of the bullet point right now. It'll make sense in a minute. But how long after the project pays off the debt, and the debt meaning the debt for the infrastructure, how long after that does the data center go obsolete? So if you look under the steady state bullet points, it says phase 2 completes in 2031. But the $4.8 million per year to Beaver Dam doesn't start until 2046. Well, what's happening between 2031 and 2046 is that all of the taxes that this data center is producing are going towards paying off the infrastructure for electricity and water and sewer until it's paid off. And it's going to take 15 years from 2031 to do it. according to their proposal. So that's why Beaver Dam doesn't see a penny of revenue in its general fund from this project until 2046. Now, going back to the fourth bullet point under risks, if you're at 20 years from completion, well, that's 2031 plus 20 is 2051. You're going to carry on for five-ish years here, and then all of a sudden it's going to go obsolete. And you've made 4.8 million a year for 5 years, but now you have a giant problem on your hands. In hindsight, probably not worth it, because you can't use the infrastructure for anything else. Nobody else is there, and now you're drunk on the revenue from this data center, and it's about to pull the plug on you. This is the bleak picture that I was staring at, that Port Washington is staring at. And in fact, you guys, Port Washington and Beaver Dam, have it worse than Caledonia, because we weren't going to use this construct called the tax increment district. But put that aside for a minute. Getting these small communities so concentrated into a single taxpayer, knowing that that taxpayer is going to leave the building, literally leave the building, in a 20-year time frame, is just simply irresponsible city management. There's no other way to put it. And the only excuse that I can give them is they don't know that these data centers go obsolete in 15 to 25 years. If you're on the short end of that, and you've been following the math here, you might not ever see a penny out of this project in your general fund. You're going to spend every last penny paying for the infrastructure of the electricity and the water and sewer extension, which will be essentially a bridge to nowhere when the data center is gone. And again, it doesn't get any worse than that in terms of managing a city. You should be looking out easily 20 years, 30 years, 50 years at the outside. After that, I think it's safe to say, we'll figure that out when we get there in 51 years. But to be ignoring a 20-year time frame is irresponsible, and it's setting you up, it's setting up the people who are going to live there in 20 years for a huge shock and a huge problem. Before I go on, I'm going to pause and ask if there are any questions. Or our jaws on the floor.
I got one. What about the power usage? Is that
Yep, hang on, let me finish the financial piece, and we can go back to some of those other topics.
I just want to make, I'll make one comment, Prescott. So
Yeah.
the TID in question is TID 10. And when I called Tracy, well, I talked to Trent Campbell, who's, what is he, the project
According to
engineer or something?
according to
I
the
don't remember
inspector,
his
he's the
exact
project
title.
man that we're supposed to contact for any questions after this.
For questions on the data center, and his contact information is on there. And I, after talking with Prescott, tried to get the TID 10 because it's not posted on the City of Beaver Dam's website like the other 4 active TIDs are. And so I called Tracy Farron to try to get that for us for tonight, so we would have it, or at least, and then they would get it back up onto the website so that the community would have access to it. So, but as of when I left for the meeting today, I didn't have the TID 10 documents, and as far as I know, it still is not up on the City of Beaver Dam website. It may be now, I don't know, but it wasn't, at 4:30 today. So that piece of information that Prescott's talking about is gonna be available at some point here. We just didn't have it in time for the meeting. So.
All right, so
question?
yep.
Yes. Knowing the fast progress in this AI, there's a big risk, the way I see it. You look at the world about this competition, who gets the AI, and the AI is going to change, all right? How I feel that this project may not even work, or will not even go to completion because of the change in the technology. All right? Just for example, we have been digging all these 5G towers, all these cables, all right? Whereas in places like China, they are now using satellite, but you don't even, our phone do not need anymore those things. All right, so I'm saying there's a big chance that the technology of this present AIs in this country may not work until my lifetime or 2047.
You're absolutely right. I could spend another hour listing all of the possible risks to something happening in the project start 7 to 10 years. I could spend another hour talking about the multiple risks that would shorten 15 to 25 down to 15 or even down to 10. But that is absolutely the critical point here, is that nobody can predict where the technology is going. The only thing you can predict is that at some point on this 25-year timeline, whatever's built for these data centers is going to be obsolete, and it is a massive risk for the city. And now let me explain here why this is not just it's a financial risk, not just the risk that they won't build as much as they say, or they will, walk away with the deal before they even build something, which, by the way, would actually be good if they hurried up and withdrew. But I want you to take the word TID, which is confusing, and just replace it with project. So think about the project of building this data center. There's a whole bunch of infrastructure work that goes on, electrical transmission and water and sewer extension. And that's going to that has to get paid up front, and Meta is going to pay for that. So they say. We have to see the TID documents to confirm that, but I'm pretty sure they're going to pay because Beaver Dam can't afford it. Too small. So there's a whole bunch of expense that's borne early by the developer, Meta. And then what happens as you go year by year by year, you see this thing on the left called tax increment, which is tax dollars that this facility now owes every year. It's a whopping number. It rises up to 11 million a year. Well, unfortunately, the infrastructure was really expensive, like $150 million worth of it. So all of that revenue that they produce every year, instead of going to your general fund, goes back into this project called a TID to pay off the infrastructure. And until that infrastructure is all paid off, all 150 million of it, with that tax increment, Beaver Dam doesn't see a penny. Now, if they build all this infrastructure up front, and Meta comes back and says in year 3, oh, we are only going to build it half the size because the industry changed or the technology changed and we just don't need as much. Now they're stuck with all of that infrastructure cost that they paid, but instead of 11 million a year, it's 5 million a year. So it's going to take twice as long to pay for the infrastructure costs. And it means you'll never see a dime. Even in the best case scenario, it'll be 35 years before they pay off the debt. This proposal, in my view, and I've seen a ton of these TIDs now, and I've worked on large projects my entire career, there is no room for error on this. And it's still ugly, even if it works as advertised, because you don't see a penny of revenue until that last line, 2046. And I know these data centers go obsolete, and in 2046, you're going to be at least entering the sunset period for the data center, if not already at it. And you've got a bunch of city council members who think they're doing the right thing for you long term, and they're going to look past all of your other concerns, no offense to anybody, but they're gonna look at your environmental concerns and they're gonna say, not my problem, we'll figure it out, it's just, they're just making up stuff. That's what the proponents of these things always will do. They'll just wave them away as crazy people, making stuff up. This financial angle is the one thing, in my view, that gets them. Now, if they've already made the deal, then the goal should be, how do we provide protection? Do we have an agreement yet with them that's crossed and signed on the dotted line, or is there still an opportunity to get some benefit back into this thing for the residents of Beaver Dam? I don't know the answer because we haven't seen the TID documents and we don't know how far along they are. But in no uncertain terms, they have moved, if I'm reading it right, they have moved all the risk to you and all the benefits to themselves. And they're gonna get away with it, and they may already have gotten away with it because this thing slipped through the cracks and they didn't bother to tell you that it was happening and allow you to give your input on it. And if I can go
I
one
want to
step
ask
further.
go ahead. Go ahead, Prescott.
Okay.
I was going to ask a question of how many people ever saw these numbers before tonight. There's a raise of hands. So nobody in the room here has seen any of this laid out.
When was this voted on? When did they vote on this? December is last year?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all should know too, the DNR air permits have not yet been approved. They're still in requested status.
And why are they building?
Because they think they can.
And they voted on everything before they ever told anyone that it was a data center at all. So of course we couldn't have come with all this documentation and all these data points because it wasn't, they voted on these things October 21st, 2024, and they finalized everything December 2024, and it wasn't announced that it was a data center until 2025.
So you speaking up to your city council people is vital. They cannot think that they can just get away with this. It's not over, okay?
Yeah, and you have to, without putting them on the defensive too much anyway, you have to let them know that they created this long-term risk. They sat and looked at this chart. I watched the meeting. This is a screenshot from a November meeting where they first reviewed this. And I was pulling my hair out just looking at it. And all of the people in the room were like, yeah, this is great. Those are big numbers. Let's do it. They didn't ask any questions. They didn't do anything. They didn't understand what they were voting on. And it's criminal because it's so massive. What that slide means to me when I look at it, you don't get a dime of revenue until 2046. You are funding, this is really important to understand. You are funding, you the residents, are funding the electrical and water and sewer infrastructure with tax breaks. The developer will tell you, yeah, but we wouldn't do this unless you promised to pay for those things. But they're tricking you even more by putting it in this TID thing and pretending that they're fronting the money. Well, you're paying them back, and in fact, you're probably paying them back with interest. And you're essentially paying for all of their electrical and water and sewer that is being built solely for them. It is the biggest ripoff ever. And your village or your city council did not realize that's what they were signing up for. We talked about obsolescence risk. If you do get to 2046 still intact, the data center tax revenue is a huge chunk of your tax levy, and you will, as a city, do whatever that taxpayer says forever. I promise you. All they'll have to do is just hint that they might sue you for something, and you will immediately do what they say. The other thing that's not in any of the proposed documents that I've seen is any impact to city costs. You cannot do a project this big with a corporation this big and not have any residual costs for the city over the long haul. It's just not possible. And there's probably no understanding of that whatsoever. The property owner today could be your best friend, and even if it's the same company that owns it in 25 years, they can walk away, and they will walk away because it's a bunch of different people and they're looking at the math, and the math says this thing doesn't work anymore, so let's cut bait. When they do that, valuation plummets, your budget is decimated, year over year budget hole that can only be filled by the people in the room. And the square footage of buildings, I don't know this number, but I'm just going out on a limb, making an educated guess here, is that this one campus, one building, two buildings, whatever they're gonna build, is more than the total commercial real estate space in Beaver Dam. And that just means when it's empty, you cannot fill, and you will have zero valuation on it, or minimal valuation on it, and you'll be in a world of trouble. Data centers, by the way, are purpose-built buildings, not general purpose buildings. They're very unique. If you want to see what I'm talking about, go look up Mount Pleasant Microsoft Data Center, and you can see what they look like. They do not look like warehouses. They do not look like office buildings. And they're very unique to the function of the data center. And that means that they're even harder to reuse when they've lost or they've run out of lifespan as data centers. One last slide here on the reality of the other benefits. It is admittedly construction work is a real benefit. You'll have a 3+ year project that generates a ton of work for tradespeople. The scale of the project, however, is so large that a lot of that trades work will be itinerant labor. They'll come in, they'll do the work, they'll go to the next data center and rinse and repeat. After constructions, data centers do not employ a lot of people, and they think this is good. In fact, it is good for them. They call themselves lights out data centers. There will be probably 25 people per building. It's not a lot considering the size. Data centers do not attract other commercial businesses. There are some posts on the website that I provided that show an example in West Des Moines, Iowa. Data centers do not attract residential development. They do not rely on local businesses in any way except for where those 25 people eat lunch. And data center employment is not a growth area in the field. The field of technology, that is. The field of technology is growing on the software side, and it's flat or shrinking on the data center side because we keep doing more computing power in a smaller footprint. And those are good 25 jobs, that's fine, but it's not gonna light the world on fire, and it's not gonna reinvent Beaver Dam as a technical hub. So that's my pitch. I'll open it up for questions.
So I have a question. Since it's very close to the Horicon Marsh, which I think is nationally protected.
And internationally.
Yeah. So I think that since we have a body of water that has protections, that might give us an advantageous shot to maybe get them to stop building right now.
Yeah, I think I would say your environmental topics, considering where they are going to be at least a great stall tactic.
Yeah.
Slow them down, annoy them, make them earn earn the building. Whether or not they can stop them altogether is another matter. I don't know. You'll definitely need some environmental law help there to determine whether you have a hope of stopping them.
Yep, and
They're
where,
here for the water. That's why they're building all these data centers where they are. They're here for our fresh water. The Great Lakes are right here. We've got the marshes. Like, they need so much water to cool their systems that they need fresh water, and that's why they're here.
yep.
So let me make a point about the water. I don't know, because I haven't seen any of the documents, I don't know what version of a data center they're building. The Beaver Dam design would have happened right at the cusp of a change in the industry to go from open loop to closed loop cooling.
It's closed loop so far, according to.
Okay. So if it's closed loop, if that's confirmed, then that takes off the water usage complaint because it reduces water usage to a much smaller footprint. Still commercial facilities type thing. It's not like one home. It's probably 100 homes, but they're again back to the point of you're trying to convince people to take you seriously, and you're trying to convince people to change their minds on something. You have to be very careful what arguments you use so they don't think you're crazy. And if they're saying they're closed loop water, then take it easy on that one, because if you just say you're here to steal all the water, you're easily dismissed because they went and changed the design to be closed loop and reduce the water usage. So just tread carefully there.
I still thought there was a projection that they were gonna be the number
Yes.
one water usage in the area.
So
With the closed loop system.
That could be, but that could simply be because the building is so big and it's massive compared to anything else in little old Beaver Dam.
Well, I can speak to that one when I talked to Trent Campbell, who's, again, I don't remember what his title is, but he's the contact person for this project. And he did tell me that they put somewhere in the documents an upper end of 300,000 gallons a day was what they said it would be at the solid
That's not
state.
closed loop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For those of us that know cooling systems, that's not closed loop. 300,000
No.
gallons a day. Now, to Trent's point, there is a food manufacturer in town that uses roughly that number of gallons of water per day. But again, so apparently well number 5 was designed, which is up by the north end of town here, was designed for 900,000 gallons a day. But when I asked, well, okay, that's how many gallons a day that well can pump, how many gallons a day can it handle pumping out of that aquifer before you start to have issues where people in the surrounding community who have wells or whatever start to have issues. And that is a piece of data that I think is important to us to find out, what can this aquifer handle? I mean, if we have, and that 300,000 gallon per day number is supposedly at the max capacity. However, things can change, and maybe as it goes on, maybe it does increase. I don't know. Is that a hard number? If they exceed it, are there penalties? So there's a lot of this information that we still don't know yet.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sarah?
And reaching out to the DNR is going to be really important because they're the ones who are going to be approving or denying these permits. So I can give you the contact information if you want, but you guys starting to reach out to the DNR and saying you don't want this and urging them to not approve the permits, that's going to be a really important piece of this as well.
Go ahead, back and back.
Question, so if their model forecasts at the high end, $300,000 gallon per day withdrawal, that works out to a withdrawal rate of about 200 gallons per minute, which would bump them into the high cap well permitting process with the DNR DAT cap. Do we know if they've initiated that process for a high cap well permit?
Well,
'Cause that's typically 12 to 18 months in a fast track.
as I understand, we are building city infrastructure, so they'll be on city water. It won't be on their own well.
So therefore there wouldn't necessarily be compelled to do a study of
Technically,
drawdown rates or extrapolating that.
technically, I think that's a true statement, but I don't want to say 100% yes or no, but I was told in the conversation I had with Trent that is going to be fed through the city water system, and then it'll be discharged to the city wastewater system.
So they did this to bypass the well concerns then?
I mean, that would be an obvious conclusion if you know that you've been building these data centers and you know that you're going to run into issues with permitting on a high capacity well. You know that you're going to want the city to build that infrastructure and draw off of their already existing.
Well, that raises kind of a follow-up question then. If their models are predicated in part on drawing from the city's municipal system, has the city offered any kind of feasibility study to demonstrate that they can accommodate that additional capacity?
So Trent did tell me that Jeremy, and I don't know what Jeremy's last name is, maybe some of you know, but he's in charge of the wastewater facility here in town, and he did chime in that our wastewater facility could handle that capacity of the 300,000 gallons per day coming to it. I just didn't have the time to talk to him about this, but there were discussions about that. that we do have the capacity within our wastewater.
Well, but that's a curious distinction because it sounds like they're not modeling 300,000 to your wastewater facility. The discharge to the facility would be something less than that to be determined. The unknown variable would be if the city's high cap wells could accommodate the additional withdrawal. I was curious if they accounted for that if the city offered.
Those are great questions that need to be asked of, maybe they already have the answers.
Yeah.
And to Trent's point, he says they don't do big projects like this without, when I asked him what the capacity of well number 5, what is the consequence to the aquifer below at 900,000 gallons a day, if that's its capacity? Okay, how much can it handle delivering before it starts causing issues? So those are valid questions, and to his point, he says, well, they do those kinds of studies before they dig the well. So I don't have the answer.
Here's one more angle for you that they're not going to think of because they don't do stuff this big. But let's, just making up a number, let's say their wastewater treatment only can handle 400,000 gallons a day, and this is going to add, or has a capacity left of 400,000. If this adds 300,000, now they have a 100,000 gallon capacity left, and they're a lot closer to a major infrastructure project to expand the capacity. Well, if they're not charging the project that's adding the 300 anything to the wastewater treatment plant, then they're burdening you even further down the road. As your city grows little by little, it's going to eat up that 100,000, and then all of a sudden you've got a big giant project on your hands that you have to pay for.
When will the data center be using that amount of water?
At its solid state was what I was.
So
So I'm using
when it is functional.
when it is fully functional, fully completed, fully.
There's a big chance, as far as I know, or my feeling, that technology is going to change. This thing is not going to work, and we'll be left with nothing.
Think about like how big computers were when they first built. They were the size of gymnasiums,
Exactly.
and now look, this is our bigger, more functional than that computer. And that was a span of 20, 30 years that computers got small. And those are going to get real small quickly.
I have a little interest in looking about this thing,
Yeah.
Yes.
not just the United States, but other countries.
Yep.
And I know there will be a big change in technology. What we are doing now may not be of any.
So the best way to stop it is, you said, to contact.
Exactly.
I
I
have
have
a
another
question,
question
So-
before.
Go ahead, and then we'll go to Kelly after.
Yes, kindly. Who, at this point, is dealing with, as far as government is concerned, is it the city government or is the state government involved? Because if we are going to deal with it legally, should something happen, we cannot even bargain about what are the safeguards in case things don't work out the way it is.
So I may have one answer to that. There is a very large law group that has offered to help us with this, with some of the legal counsel, and so we'll be in contact with them about this. I don't want to get into that too much, but it's a fair question. I don't remember if it was in my conversation with Trent or someone else on this, but our state legislature apparently passed some laws making it so that to attract these data centers to Wisconsin, they made some of the server equipment tax exempt that's being put into it as a way to attract the business to the state. So there are some tax advantages for them above and beyond.
Go ahead, Prescott.
Prescott.
There are two laws they passed. the one you just mentioned, so if you have to go to the state, this is where you're gonna run into a problem. One, the state, in a very bipartisan way, rare for the state these days, passed a law eliminating sales and use tax on data center equipment. And so that's what you just said. But then this project is so big for your city that it previously would have been precluded by state law because it's too big. There was a limit on the amount of space that you could put into one of these tax districts, and you exceeded it by a lot. So what did they do? They passed a law creating an exemption specifically for you and for Port Washington. And the unfortunate part of that is it passed 93-6. So I don't know, 5 or 6 people who voted no, and pat them on the back and ask them if they can help you. But you're running up a steep hill. Once you try to get to the state to try to get some satisfaction here, you're going to run into that 93-6 vote where a whole bunch of people thought this was a great idea for you.
Prescott, do you know the state statute numbers on those?
I have them somewhere. I'll send it to you.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
By the way, I've got 5 more minutes, so if anybody has any more questions for me, now would be good because I got to run in 5.
My one question is, do you know, I haven't looked into this, any data centers that have had water line breaks where they've been flood, like, oil spills and all the contaminants that are within the closed loop system gets all over and contaminates the land? Because it was like fertile farmland, that's what it was.
Yeah, I do not have that information.
Okay.
We stayed away from environmental because we felt it wasn't going to change any minds. We had 7 people whose minds we were going to change, and we focused on those 7.
Okay.
And so,
I think our saving
in particular,
grace
I didn't get into details on the environmental
that
stuff.
the Horicon Marsh is not just privately owned, but state owned, local owned, and internationally owned, and federally owned, different parts of the marsh. So I personally am going to write down to the international protections to see what they can do and help with myself. And I'm gonna go to the federal protections too. Just go beyond them right away to see what they can help with.
Okay. We had another question.
Yeah, I've heard that these data centers are very, very noisy. Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Especially the construction too.
Yeah. We took a look at this as well. We were worried about it. I think our calculations were in a rural area where there's not a lot of sound protection, that within, say, a half a mile of the facility, you'd have about a 10 decibel increase in noise. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's 24/7, just a 10 decibel increase in noise, a steady hum for whatever, all day, every day.
Yep.
Never goes away. Not a pleasant experience, but I think, in fairness, it's going to be, that's fairly limited to a small radius around the data center. That once you're past a mile, absolutely you'll never hear anything. Probably half a mile is, within a half a mile radius is probably, if it's unimpeded, it's probably something to be concerned about.
My land is just across W.
That's the road.
Okay, I have 176 acres of land there, where my homestead is also. I could see the noise is going to affect my place, and even just my hunting.
Well,
The deers and all those
construction,
things is already
the construction
out.
you need to worry about more than the operation. The construction noise, if you have an unimpeded line of sight to this facility and you're close by, that construction is gonna drive you up a tree. The construction noise is terrible. We interviewed people by the Mount Pleasant data center within the mile radius, and they did not wish that on any of their worst enemies. It was bad. Some of them just gave up and sold for any price anyone would give them, because there were still years left of construction. So that is absolutely a question that has been blown past by your city council. They did not do an analysis at all of the impact during a construction period that's 7 years long.
And is this is this not the migratory flyway?
It is. It is.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely.
They
The
actually did
noise
San
alone.
Jose Train project through here.
It's gonna
Yep.
change
So-
things.
And the lights, yeah.
Question in the
Question in the
back.
back?
Yeah.
We have 2 more questions, but we'll hurry.
So, I was curious about your experience in Caledonia there. With a project of this size in city limits, in other municipalities, have they had any success in issuing conditional use permits for these industrial sources within city limits as a mechanism to regulate or deal with ambient noise pollution and other offsite impacts that are not explicitly regulated through the Clean Air Act or Clean Water Act?
They haven't done any formal environmental impact statement at all.
Well, right, but this would be a kind of a separate thing from the EIS.
Yeah.
I was wondering if other cities have ever issued CUPs to the operators to try and
Issued what?
Conditional use permits.
conditional use permits.
I have no idea.
Okay.
He
Good
didn't focus-
question.
Good
Yeah.
question, but he didn't focus on the environmental as much because that wasn't gonna get them in here, so.
Yep, remember that this is just the initial meeting, and unfortunately, because of the shadiness of your city council with all this, we're being reactive instead of proactive. So this is just the beginning. If there are questions that you have, we can find answers to them. Right now is just the initial time to get everybody together, get everybody educated, and then start to get y'all to ring some bells. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've got questions, please write them down so that we can try to find answers later on.
Yep.
So Prescott, you have to
Yep.
go.
There's one more question.
Yeah, one more
Go
question.
ahead.
I was just wondering about the air quality out there right now because it's like a dust bowl. And I know someone that lives right there and they've had numerous issues with not just constant dust, the noise, but their foundation is cracking, their water softener is cracking in the house. They came and gave them, to get it fixed, but I mean, it's already, and they raised the
And it's
dirt
gonna last for
level
7
behind
years.
their house, so I'm sure in the spring floods they'll flood.
So I'm gonna speak. Go ahead.
It's gonna be 7 years of misery for anybody that lives close, where close is under a mile. And if I were running a city and somebody wanted to build a data center of this magnitude in my location, I would force them to buy out all of the properties in that 1 mile radius. And your city council didn't even ask the question, what's the impact to the residents? It's negligent at best. It's horrible. You cannot do that to people. You're stealing. This is back to I love fairness and I detest unfairness. You cannot steal money from people and give it to a corporation. And that's exactly what you're doing to people that are within a short radius of this site. 7 years of that. What if they had to sell their property? Like death in the family, sickness, whatever, change jobs. You're gonna sell in the worst possible market because you're right across the street from a 7-year-long construction project. You're gonna take a bath on your property. You can't do that to people. It's not fair. And you, at the very least, give them an opportunity to yell and scream before you vote on it. They didn't even do that. It's just terrible. Makes my blood boil.
Thank you, Prescott.
Thank you.
Anytime I come up and see you in person, this was bad timing for that, but
Next
happy
meeting.
to help anytime. You know where to find me.
Thank you so much.
Thanks
Yeah,
again.
you're awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.